As you guys may be aware of, I've been covering this on my own personal social media profiles, but Israel, of course, is still on an unlimited rampage, unlimited genocide. And as a part of its unlimited genocide, Israel assassinated numerous Al Jazeera journalists, very famous ones, as a matter of fact, yesterday, and then basically said that the journalists they assassinated were Hamas. The journalist I'm talking about, of course, is al-Sharif, a very famous Al Jazeera journalist from Al Jazeera Arabic. He was assassinated last night, and he was targeted and killed for doing journalism. We're obviously going to be talking about this. It is insane. Of course, Israel has not stopped. They're still bombing. Israel bombed the home of the Dalul family in Gaza, killing more than 10 people according to reports and wounding others. Among the residents is prominent journalist Motasem Dalul. Reports say that when neighbors rushed in to pull the victims from the rubble, Israel struck again, a double tap strike, hitting the rescuers. This comes less than 24 hours after an Israeli attack killed 6 journalists in Gaza City, including Anas al-Sharif. They are actively trying to kill the remaining journalists in Gaza. They are openly and deliberately targeting journalists and then claiming, well, this journalist was Hamas, okay? And the guilt by association, Mohammed El-Kurd also talked about this as well. I tweeted about this as well. Here, I'll show you, because I retweeted that scumbag al-Yacobi is, oh, well, they took photos with Hamas officials, including Yahya Sinwar. So obviously they're Hamas. They did this in the past as well. There is no justification for killing a non-combatant, especially a journalist, regardless of who they have taken photos with, for the record, just so you understand, especially because, as I've said over and over again, if the world operated by Israel standards for combat, then you could literally nuke Tel Aviv and claim that it's totally justifiable. Of course, it is not justifiable act, but just understand that the only reason why they can get away with saying this is because of unlimited, unadulterated racism. Al-Yacobi says, innocent journalist, okay? I said, Zionists justify the murder of journalists by pointing to photos they've taken with political officials of the governing party to imply they're valid military targets in a country, Israel, with mandatory service where people take photos with genocidal war criminals with regular frequency. Of course, there's obviously Trey Yingst as well, who has also taken photos with Hamas militants, like literally. This kind of argument is ridiculous in a country, especially where there is literally a mandatory draft, a mandatory military service, as in every single person has been a part of, pretty much every single person has been a part of the Israeli occupying forces currently committing a genocide, okay? If the rules of war were to be implemented in the way that Israel is conducting itself, then it would be justified to nuke Tel Aviv, considering that every single person in Tel Aviv, every single adult in Tel Aviv has either served in the Israeli occupying force that's currently committing a genocide or have served in the Israeli occupying force in the past. Not only that, but also every single person responsible for the internal governance and civil society organizations within the Israeli structure, within the Israeli state, would also be active military targets. This is by Israel's own estimation of what is considered a valid military target, okay? It's ridiculous. They kill entire families. They take down entire city blocks because they say, well, this person was like in charge of, I don't know, keeping the streets clean in the Hamas Politburo. It is insane. It is completely insane. But of course, they do not do this. This is not a standard that is applied to Israel. It's not a standard applied to anyone but Palestinians, because people do not consider Palestinians to be human beings. That's it. The instinct of many defenders of the Palestinians is to dispel the connection between the slain Palestinian media workers and their supposed political leanings, as if anywhere in the world these exist in isolation. While it is demanded of us to distance ourselves from the guerrilla fighters struggling against colonialism and occupation, Zionist soldiers, the colonizers and occupiers, can work without much irony or scrutiny in newsrooms and in media watchdog organizations. And it's crazy because one of the guys that does this is the IDF veteran, the Israeli occupying force veteran, who is the embed reporter for the Israeli occupying force for Times of Israel. Emmanuel Fabian is an Israeli occupying force veteran. He also is the Times of Israel Israeli occupying force correspondent. He routinely is embedded with IDF troops in Gaza. And Emmanuel Fabian will, without even a shred of irony, routinely post Israel's defenses of murdering technically his colleagues on the other side that are being genocided. Like Emmanuel Fabian, as a direct consequence of like being embedded with the IOF, is way more of a valid military target than like any of these guys are. What the And he doesn't even recognize that irony. He does not even recognize that irony. He's like an active combatant. He has been an active combatant, and he's currently a part of the military wing doing propaganda for the army that is currently doing a genocide. And yet he routinely posts Palestinian journalists getting killed and saying, well, these are valid military targets. Take, for example, Axios' political reporting covering Israeli affairs. Barak Ravid, who was, until March 2023, a reservist in the Israeli occupation forces while working for an international media outlet. Or the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg, who dropped out of his American university to volunteer in the Israeli occupying force during the first Intifada. Then, during the course of his job, a so-called prison counselor at the notorious Ketziot camp lied to cover up for a friend whom he witnessed beating a prisoner. Correspondents entangled with the Israeli army are not challenged on the basis of proximity to the conflict, let alone condemned to die because of their participation in or fondness of the Israeli military apparatus. They do not need to be humanized. This is an inconsistent double standard that is never shown on the Israeli side. Israelis do not have to advocate for their own humanity. It is a given. Palestinians, on the other hand, have to consistently advocate for their humanity, even after they are murdered by the Israeli state that is openly doing a genocide. It's crazy. And Israel hasn't stopped. And we're going to continue talking about it. And I'll read you his final message as well.
For the first time, Israel is taking responsibility for a deadly attack on journalists in Gaza, but claiming that one of the Al Jazeera Arabic journalists worked for Hamas.
Like, the Israeli state claims should be a non-starter. I don't give a f*** Israeli state claims. They are lying. They're lying. They lie all the time. They have never been truthful. Why do you still, after 22 months of genocide, when the Israeli state is openly saying they are going to permanently occupy the Gaza Strip militarily, why are you still going, well, the genocider army has claimed that the another victim of their genocide is actually not a journalist, but instead a Hamas militant. Okay, if the Israeli state says it, then it's, then I guess it's fine. I guess then it's a legal kill. It's so insane. I don't give a what the Israeli state says, okay? The only time I care about what the Israeli state is saying is to know what the lie is. The only way to understand what the truth is to recognize that the opposite of what the Israeli state is claiming is probably the truth. There's absolutely no reason why the New York Times shouldn't be fact-checking every single claim made by Israeli authorities like it does with Trump here. President Trump said he was taking control of the DC police due to out-of-control crime, even though violent crime on the city has fallen. Mainstream journalists and editors insist on platforming Israeli claims for objectivity's sake, but if they truly wanted to be objective reporters, they'd preface every Israel statement by noting Israel's record of disinformation and the absence of independently verifiable evidence, especially when Israel is not only directly at war against all journalists, okay, journalists who are literally correspondents for these international media organizations, for Western press in general. Israel keeps killing the Western press's own correspondents in the Strip, okay? But also, Israel is directly at war with the truth. Israel's not even allowing Western press and Western media to enter the Gaza Strip. That in and of itself is enough for any Western media company worth its salt to immediately apply scrutiny. Why won't they let us in? Why won't they want us to cover the truth? Why won't they let us report truthfully about what's going on the ground? The very fact that the New York Times is still playing this song and dance is insane, okay? It's not unexpected, to be fair. They have done so since the beginning.
Were killed by an airstrike outside of a hospital in Gaza City yesterday. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is talking about plans to take over Gaza. Deborah Petta is in East Jerusalem. Deborah, good morning.
A very good morning. Well, amid growing condemnation at home and abroad, Prime Minister Netanyahu has defended his new plan to expand the war. The Israeli leader held a rare media conference with the foreign press over the weekend. Prime Minister Netanyahu lashed out at what he called a global campaign.
Dude, this is so crazy too. Like, one of the most insane lines of argumentation from the Israeli state now is it's like almost childlike. I mean, this is disgusting, right? This is like blatant Nazi propaganda. It's Holocaust denial. And of course, Benjamin Netanyahu is doing it. That is expected. But one of the most insane things that he's now claiming, which we saw the Israeli state throw out in that Fox News interview that he had, is that, oh, we're going to let journalists into the Strip, right? They're going to inevitably let journalists into the Strip. It's going to be favorable coverage, obviously. But even in the process, if they accidentally reveal that like the entirety of the Gaza Strip has been destroyed, what is Netanyahu's comments on that? Oh, Hamas booby trapped it. That's what they're saying. Their argument for why the entire Gaza Strip has been flattened by multiple nuclear arms worth of munitions by the Israeli state is because Hamas booby-trapped every building. That is unironically what they're claiming. That's what they're saying. They're saying Hamas had 8 atomic bombs worth of explosive ordnance that they put into every single building, and they actually blew up the civilian buildings themselves. I'm sorry. If you believe that, you can't breathe without supervision. You know what I mean? You need like someone to consistently tell you to manually breathe. You have to be the dumbest person on the planet. And I don't think you're that dumb. I don't think any human being is that dumb. I think you just are looking for any reason to continue defending Israel's genocide because you like it, but at least you like read the room and you recognize that maybe people are not on board with it any longer. So you're just like actively trying to grab onto any defensible position in an otherwise completely indefensible sequence of horrifying war crimes and an ethnic cleansing campaign and a genocide, a live-streamed Holocaust. You sure that is what booby trap means? Don't they mean that they had to destroy the building so their soldiers wouldn't die in a trap? Yeah, no, that's what they're saying. They're saying Hamas booby-trapped every building. That's why they had to level every building so that they could blow up the booby traps. That's what they're saying. Or at least like the booby traps themselves actually exploded the buildings. It doesn't matter. It is just a lie. He has said both. Both are insane. What are you talking about? Do you think this is a consequence of booby trapping? Are you nuts?
Means the media will still only be allowed in under Israeli military control. For 22 months, the burden of documenting the war has fallen on Palestinian journalists inside Gaza. Over 200 have been killed. Just hours after the media briefing, an Al Jazeera crew, including correspondent al-Sharif, was targeted in an Israeli strike in Gaza City. The IDF claims Sharif was the head of a Hamas cell, but just over 2 weeks ago, the New York-based Committee to Protect Journalists said it was gravely worried for his safety.
Who cares what Israel says, man? Just say that they lie all the time. You have to explain that they're lying. What do you mean? This is not journalism. Israel said he was a leader of the Hamas military wing or whatever. Oh, okay. If Israel said so, it's nuts that we still have to play the song and dance. It's been 22 months. They are very open about their genocidal ambition. What is going on? Everyone can see it. It is now officially, I mean, it's been this way for a while, but it's certainly like in broad daylight. It is now more problematic to consistently defend Israel in the eyes of the broader public than it is to run cover for it. Okay? You are destroying what remains of the limited credibility that you had. You've already actively eroded that confidence that people had in mainstream publications by doing this over and over again. But now you're going to lose the remaining boomers. You're at that stage where like the 75-year-olds are going to look at this and be like, what the do you mean?
في كل ليلة الاحتلال الإسرائيلي يرتكب مجازر من المواطنين في هذه.
Before he was assassinated by Israeli forces along with 4 Al Jazeera colleagues. One of the victims is still clinging on to life. And the rescue teams are trying with the most basic tools to get him out.
حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل.
A Palestinian man urged him to continue when he broke down in tears during his coverage.
سحب الجثامين من داخل هذه المدرسة.
الآن حزام ناري واستهداف عدد من المدارس
مدرسة حمامة بحي الشيخ رضوان.
غارة إسرائيلية تستهدف أحد المركبات هنا أمام مجمع الشفاء الطبي. الآن نتقدم إلى هذه المدرسة التي تم فيها المجزرة.
القوات المتنبية الصباح الرسول إلى المكان جثامين أشلاء. نتحدث عن مجزرة كبيرة، عشرات من الشهداء هنا في داخل هذه المدرسة.
His own immediate family members were murdered in the process. He hadn't seen his father in 60 days when he was killed in an airstrike.
لم أتمكن من الوصول إلى المنزل نتيجة هذا القصف المتواصل وتم دفنه داخل مراكز اللواء.
صباح الخير. صباح الخير.
صباح النور
يا روحي. طبعا اليوم الصباح مختلف شام.
يلا باي يا بابا. أن نخلع هذه الخوذة ميادة التي أرهقتني طوال هذه الخطوة. كان على مدار الوقت يرافقني، والآن نعلن هنا من داخل قطاع غزة ومن داخل مدينة غزة هذا الإعلان ووقف إطلاق النار.
100 طفل كانوا يحفظون القرآن بين أروقة.
Yeah, that's him. As a child, al-Sharif appeared on the Al Jazeera during the 2008 Gaza war.
المسجد المستهدف.
تطورات أن وزارة الصحة الفلسطينية سيما في صفوف الأطفال، ونحن طبعا هذا المشهد هو جزء من المعاناة، جزء من المجاعة التي ما زالت متواصلة ومستمرة في داخل القطاع. نتحدث عن نقص جميع المواد الغذائية في داخل القطاع، نقص حليب الأطفال، أدنى المقومات الصحية. في هذا الوقت جيش الاحتلال الإسرائيلي يرتكب مجزرة بعد استهداف.
The Israeli military just killed him. Look at the photo caption. This is the Committee to Protect Journalists. CPJ calls for Anas al-Sharif's protection in face of Israeli smears. Al Jazeera Arabic's Gaza correspondent Anas al-Sharif has been called a terrorist multiple times by an Israeli army spokesperson after the journalist cried, reporting on starvation in Gaza. Anas al-Sharif was born in 1996. He was 4 when the Second Intifada began in 2000. He was 11 when Israel imposed a blockade in Gaza in 2007. He was 12 during Cast-led in 2008 to 2009. He was 18 during the 2014 assault on Gaza. He was 29 when Israel assassinated him in 2025. Was he targeted? Yes. He was deliberately targeted in a tent with other Al Jazeera journalists and assassinated by the Israeli state. And Israel has openly stated they are killing journalists specifically for covering Israel's war crimes. Do you understand? Israel assassinated Anas al-Sharif before the invasion of Gaza City so that it will happen in darkness. Here are some brief notes on Israeli targeting and decision making.
That a group of journalists was just intentionally targeted with a kinetic strike by the Israeli military in the Al Jazeera journalist tent in Gaza City, because they do their targeting operations based off cell phone signals. So somewhere, someone in the targeting cell was like, all these journalists are here, drop it. And it's hard to do a battle damage assessment based off of this video, but it's clearly, there's no crater, it was not a bomb. It was most likely a precision munition like a Hellfire missile shot from a Q-9 Reaper drone. As you can see, there's no blasted terrain. Okay, so basically, I've been tracking this for a long time. When they go to kill journalists or aid workers, they use precision munitions like this because they want to be able to see the bodies, see on thermal imaging the heat go away out of the bodies so they can confirm that they're dead. You can't do that if you're trying to kill a high-value target with a bomb because it just destroys everything. There's a drone somewhere circling above, making sure all of these guys are dead. This strike was not about leveling Gaza. This one was to kill the prominent journalists reporting the genocide. So, rest in power, y'all. And are there any quote-unquote Western journalists that would like to say anything?
Here's the Israeli occupation forces bragging about this assassination. Struck Hamas terrorist Anas al-Sharif, who posed as an Al Jazeera journalist. Al-Sharif was the head of a Hamas terrorist cell and advanced rocket attacks on Israeli civilians and IDF troops. Intelligence and documents from Gaza, including rosters, terrorist training lists, and salary records, prove he was a Hamas operative integrated into Al Jazeera. A press badge isn't a shield for terrorism. Even your own fabricated document about Anas incriminates you 100%. It claims he was wounded in a training explosion in early 2023 and was left incapacitated and unfit for military service with extremely weak hearing in the left ear, weak eyesight, constant migraines, and headaches. In other words, Anas, per your own document, has zero military role during the entire period of the genocide, yet he was murdered so openly for the crime of being a journalist. As you guys know, this isn't the first journalist that Israel has assassinated. Hossam Shabbat comes to mind, someone who I spoke with frequently in North Gaza, who chose to remain in North Gaza and covered the atrocities that were unfolding when Israel was trying to implement a blackout in North Gaza in some of the worst periods of the ethnic cleansing campaign. And Israel claimed that he was a Palestinian Islamic Jihad sniper, and then they assassinated him. When they did so, a couple of weeks prior to his assassination, we knew that he was under the crosshairs. Of course, Ahmed Fouad al-Khatib, Ethan Klein's favorite Palestinian collaborator with the Israeli state and the American government, had actively put a target on the backs of numerous journalists, including al-Sharif. It's not, drama adjacent. This is just something that other Palestinian contributors are talking about as well. This is terrible news. Israel pulled the trigger, but I squarely blame Ahmed Fouad al-Khatib for their deaths. He planted false stories about Anas and is directly responsible for his murder. I also blame the Atlantic and Atlantic Council for giving this rat a platform for his lethal smears. Here's what he said on February 10th. Al Jazeera journalist Anas al-Sharif and cameraman attempted to provoke a security incident at the Netzarim corridor at the behest of Hamas. They tried to put up a drone above the Egyptian and American forces after the withdrawal of Israeli troops to capture footage, but were likely gathering intel and scouting the area for Hamas. He recognizes that these guys are journalists and they're covering the Netzarim corridor, but then says it's for Hamas purpose, which was rumored to want to use the Netzarim corridor as a site for future hostage release to prove it is in full control of Gaza. The American PMCs worked with the Egyptian security personnel to get the drone operator not to fly it overhead, with tensions escalating. The Al Jazeera journalist team sent it up anyway, and the video of the incident has been distributed on social media with laughter, commentary to boast about defying U.S. security contractors and proving that the Netzarim, like most of Gaza, is back under the full control of the resistance. Extremely reckless behavior that's going to endanger the ceasefire and create unnecessary risk for the civilians and the fragile calm that is desperately needed. Once again, Israel had never actually wanted to have fragile calm in that area and no area in Gaza. Israel violated that ceasefire openly. Reminder that this is what he posted when Israel murdered beloved journalist Hossam Shabbat. Al Jazeera's fake journalists and mercenaries are working overtime trying to serve their Islamist overlords and save Hamas from collapse. Never forget that Al Jazeera is the media arm of Hamas. Al Jazeera equals Hamas, but the people of Gaza finally see through both. There's no going back. This is what Ahmed Fouad al-Khatib said when Israel assassinated Hossam Shabbat. 21 years old, by the way. That's who this demon is. Nazi collaborator, piece of shit.